Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brooklyn, and for today's video I am going to be showing you guys all the books that I read in the month of August, as well as talking about my TBR for September. I read 7 books in the month of August. Let me give you guys some stats on these books. So as I mentioned, I read 7 books in the month of August. 5 of those books were romance. One of them was a mystery, and then the other one was teen romance slash coming of age novel, young adult. In total, my average rating was 4 stars. The average page count that I read this month was 395 pages. That's all the stats that I have for this month. So overall, I think this was a really good month. I had a real fun time reading these books. I read a good chunk of them also on my Kindle, so that's why I feel like I read a lot of these faster. All of these books I have read in videos that I have posted, so if you have not seen those yet, you can go check those out if you want to see me read these and my thoughts while reading them. So the first book that I read in the month of August was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series. This book follows Summer and Rhett is a professional bull rider. He has gotten himself into a bit of trouble and his public image is a little bit skewed. So his agent's daughter Summer has been tasked with the job of basically babysitting Rhett to make sure he doesn't ruin his public image any more that he already has. That's basically the story. I really enjoyed this book. I've heard so much about the Chestnut Springs series. I definitely want to get into more of them as the year goes on, maybe before the year ends. So I ended up rating this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed reading this. I also read this on my Kindle. This was part of the reading on my Kindle for a week video, and I really enjoyed this book. It was very fast paced. It was also my very first cowboy romance, and I loved it. It was so good. I love the whole vibe of this book in Chestnut Springs, and it's that found family aspects that it brought. Overall, I really enjoyed this book and I would highly recommend. I am super excited to go further into this series and read more about Rhett's brothers and friends a part of this whole world. The second book that I read this month was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was another book that I've had on my shelf for quite some time now. So this book follows Olive and Ethan. Olive's sister Amy is getting married to Ethan's brother, and that is where they're kind of forced into a proximity at the wedding. Olive and Ethan don't really get along with each other. They've had some little run-ins in the past that just made them have negative perceptions of one another. So at this wedding, they kind of have to work together for a short period of time. The wedding really doesn't take up much of the book, but during the wedding, everyone gets sick and basically it leaves the honeymoon up for grabs. Olive's sister Amy offers the honeymoon to her sister and says, you should go, have fun, because Olive doesn't seem to have really good luck and she feels that the honeymoon is the perfect opportunity. It's just the universe basically handing her a time away and to enjoy herself. But the only downside is that Ethan was also given the opportunity to take the honeymoon, and her and Ethan have to go together. While they're on the honeymoon, they're forced into situations where they have to act like they are the married couple and more or less fake date and be in this relationship. I really enjoyed this book. I give this 3.75 stars. As always, Christina Lauren's writing is so good and the story flows so well. The characters are really great. I thought this book was really funny and I was laughing out loud at so many parts. The only thing that I would say is that I felt like the ending was rushed, or just I left feeling a little like meh about it. I don't know. I didn't really like the ending of this book, and that's why my rating wasn't so high. 3.75 is still good, but it just kind of left like a bitter taste in my mouth because of how the characters reacted at the end situation. But during the time that they were on the honeymoon, I loved it. It was so fun. I loved the vibe that it gave. It took place in Maui during the summer. It was like the perfect time to read this book. The romance in this was really good. I loved the characters. I thought their dynamic was really fun, witty, and had a lot of banter in it. Overall, I really loved this book. It was just the ending that I didn't really enjoy as much. The next book that I read was Twisted Games by Anna Wong. This book, you guys, caught me by surprise. So this book follows Bridget, who is a princess. She is a girl who loves her freedom. She wants a life that she can make all the decisions herself, but she can't really because of her status. And what ends up happening is her brother basically steps down from being the ruler of the country that she's from for love to marry someone who is not royal blood. So that forces Bridget into stepping into the royal lifestyle and moving back to her country and kind of leaving her life behind. And in that time that she is living her life in the US and then moving back, she is in the company of her bodyguard Reese. So Reese is a stoic, broody guy, very strict on his rules of protecting his clients and also never getting emotionally involved with them. But as we know, that doesn't happen. So we see this really fun dynamic between Bridget and Reese navigating the whole situation that they're thrown into, especially as she transitions into becoming queen queen, the idea of her dating her bodyguard really isn't highly looked upon. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. I was very shocked by this because in my opinion, I definitely think the Twisted series is a good series, but it's more of a palate cleansing series. I also hated Twisted Love. I thought the book was so cringy. So much was thrown into it to make the main guy this broody, scary guy. It was just so dramatic and extra, and I just hated reading it. So I was a little hesitant going into these, and it took me like a year to get back into the series. But once I got into the story and started reading it more, I really enjoyed it. I loved Reese and Bridget. I just loved the whole story, the forbidden romance, and like the close proximities, the secret moments that they share with one another. I absolutely loved, and I ate this book up. Definitely one of my favorite books of the Twisted series. This is the second one I've read, so considering that I hated Twisted Love and I love this one says a lot. I am excited to read the other books in this series. Moving on, I read Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the second book in the Maple Hills series. This follows Russ and Aurora. Russ and Aurora have a little night together at a party that Russ is throwing for his friends on the hockey team that are seniors and they're graduating. So it's like this big going away party for them, and Russ at this party meets Aurora. They have a one-night stand. Aurora leaves without really exchanging any information of who she is. Just a few days after their night together, they end up running into each other at their new summer camp jobs that they both didn't know the other would be at. We get this little encounter between the two where they have to spend basically the whole summer with each other after that awkward night that they had. That's basically where the story takes off from there. There's also like no staff fraternizing rules, so there's that little tension that's created between the two of them. I ended up giving this book 3.25 stars. I honestly can't really remember reading Icebreaker, so I didn't really remember Russ, but he was really sweet. Russ is definitely a golden retriever, words of affirmation, kind, caring man, very gentle in the sense, and then Aurora's very outgoing, bubbly, kind of just speaks whatever's on her mind, while Russ is very shy and reserved. They also have very similar complicated home life situation, so you see that bond between them. I just felt this book was very unproblematic. I really enjoyed the summer camp aspect of this book. I thought it was a fun switch up to the normal just hockey college campus thing we usually find in these types of books. There was also a really cute found family with the other counselors that worked at this camp because they're from other colleges, they're other athletes, and they all just have their own fun personalities that brought so much humor to this book. I just felt this book lacked plot and there wasn't much to it. It wasn't too heavy on the summer camp aspect to where it was overrun by the kids. There also wasn't a lot of sneaking around, if that makes sense. I don't know, just based off of this and what I read from it, I thought this would have been way spicier than it was, because Icebreaker had so much spice in it. I thought it would have the same amount in this book. Also, like, no fraternizing with staff, that they'd be sneaking around more. In some aspects, yes, they were, but there wasn't a lot of spice in this book, which was fine. And if you took it out, there would still be a meaningful aspect in their relationship and a little bit of the plot, but there was never this overarching goal that we were reaching for. It was just like the book ended and we're like, oh, okay, hey, everyone's happy. So I don't know. It was just pleasant, and I didn't know how to feel about it, and I couldn't hate it because it wasn't a bad book. Nothing happened in it. It's like the definition of a palate cleanser. You could assume what you were gonna get from this book from the get-go. It just wasn't dramatic. I don't know how to describe it and how to like verbalize these feelings. It wasn't a bad book. It just lacked plot, but I did love the characters and it was a fun read. If you are interested in continuing on with the Maple Hills series, I would definitely recommend reading this. It's not a bad book. I also wanted to mention for this book, I read it on a mix of my Kindle, the physical book, and the audiobook, which I had on Spotify. The audiobook was really good. I listened to it for most, or like a good chunk of the book, because the narrators in here were really fun. Next book I read is The Goal by Elle Kennedy. This book is the 4th book in the Off-Campus series following Sabrina and Tucker. Sabrina and Tucker have a one-night stand together, and from that one-night stand, Sabrina ends up getting pregnant. She did not plan for this, obviously, so this is an unexpected, unplanned pregnancy trope. I didn't know that going into this book until while I was filming the video. I was reading the back of this and realized that there is an unplanned child in this. So that kind of shocked me. I think I would have enjoyed it more if that wasn't mentioned at all and it was a true shock factor, because I was just waiting for the moment to happen that she found out. Kind of same thing with Wildfire. It isn't so heavy on hockey because Tucker isn't that obsessed with it or going to the pro level in hockey. It definitely focuses more on the unplanned pregnancy and navigating their relationship through that, because Sabrina and Tucker were more or less strangers when they met. I ended up rating this book 3.5 stars. This book I have very mixed emotions on because I enjoy this more than the 2nd and 3rd book in the series, but something about the trope. This was also my first time reading this trope. I don't know if this was the right couple to be introduced to this trope because Sabrina annoyed me so much. There's almost a level of understanding that yes, unplanned pregnancy is something that can be scary, especially for Sabrina because she wasn't planning on it, obviously, but her life was very methodically plotted out. This situation was, I feel like, very amplified for her, but she was just not very open to allowing Tucker to step into that father role almost and giving her like a shoulder to lean on during her pregnancy. And that's what I think annoyed me the most about this book, because she was also very insecure just overall. It's like, this man loves you, and she could not comprehend that in her brain. So I think that's what I really didn't like. I will say I did like their dynamic when their moments were good and they were happy, but in the moments that they were not, I didn't really enjoy reading it. In my honest opinion, I just think Tucker deserved better. There was like a whole issue at the very end of the book. I had like 15 pages left. I remember this so vividly, and there was a whole commotion that came up just to get them to a point in the relationship that was like almost like the final aspect that they needed to reach, which I get why they needed to get to that point, but how they got there was so unnecessary in my opinion. It just made me feel even more angry towards this whole coupling. I feel like this book definitely had more plot in it than the second and third one in this series. Was it my favorite based on the trope? No, but I could definitely appreciate the story because it wasn't just spice, you know? Now getting into the mix-up of genres, this is my one mystery thriller YA book from this month. This is the second book in the Inheritance Game series. This is the Hawthorne Legacy. I thoroughly enjoyed this book, definitely more than the first one. This book is a continuation of the first story, following Avery and the Hawthorne family slash brothers, and just continuing on with the mysteries and the riddles from the first one. I can't really say too much about this book just because it is the second book and it's a continuation of what happens from the first one into this one, so anything I say will most likely spoil it. But I will say that the riddles in this one were a lot more fun in my opinion. And if you don't know, there's a beautiful love triangle that takes place in this story, and it was in full effect in this book. If you saw my reading vlog reading this, I was eating it up. I ended up rating this book 4.5 stars. I love this book so much. It was so good. I'm so excited to read the final one. I need to get to it at some point. Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing is so fast-paced. These chapters are so short. It feels like you're reading so much in such a little time. The book is just so encapturing, and you just get lost in the story very easily. It doesn't take a lot of brain power. Even though there's mystery and riddles, they're still fun to solve, but you're not like really trying to turn the gears in your head that much. So I can really appreciate that. But the romance, you guys, I need that. This book had me giggling and just, I'm like speechless right now, because when a book has this good of a romance, that's how you know I love it. So much better than the first one, because I think the characters are more developed in this book and we just go right to the story and we don't have to really introduce anyone. There are more characters introduced into this. Obviously we see more sides of personalities in it as well, and it's just such a fun book. I would highly recommend this series, and I know she has other series that are really good as well. If you have this series on your shelf, I would 100% read it very soon. I love this book so much, and I would highly recommend this to anyone. Love this book very much. One of my favorite reads from this month by far. Why did I get so emo? I think these are like suppressed emotions. I need to wrap it up. Okay. The final book that I read in the month of August is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This book follows Autumn and Finney. They were childhood best friends. They were inseparable growing up, and eventually at some point they ended up separating and growing distant from one another. This book is solely told through the perspective of Autumn, so we get to see a little bit of flashbacks from their childhood and see their dynamic growing up and now their relationship to current time, which is high school. But we also get to see little parts and moments of them through middle school, basically just their whole childhood. We see them grow up and their relationship and dynamic and how it kind of splits from one another. Autumn and Finn are in very different social circles, but because their moms are best friends, they live next door to each other, and it's inevitable that their paths cross every so often. We really live through the life of Autumn in this story and her navigating high school, her first high school boyfriend, and her feelings about Finn and their relationship, their friendship. It really is such a simple story when you think about it in that way, because we're really just, it's like a, not a character study, but we really are just following these characters. Nothing, there's no big, well, there is kind of an end. So I ended up rating this book 5 stars. Honestly, this is probably like a 6+ star book for me. I have not stopped thinking about it. I have not stopped listening to the playlist of this book. This book has affected me in such a drastic way. I can't even begin to explain or verbalize how much it has affected me in such a positive way, kind of a negative way too, because my heart still hurts from reading it. I will say, yes, there are some parts that are cringy in this book. I would say the writing's a little bit more, it's obviously YA, so the writing's gonna be a little iffy, but I really didn't have a problem with this. I read this book in one day. There was never a moment while reading this book that I felt like I was reading it or worried about the page count. The chapters are very short and it's just so easy to read that once again you kind of become like engrossed in the story. It's so easy to follow because you want to know what happens at the ending. How this book is set up is it mentions the ending and then it leaves a very vague kind of cliffhanger to the full extent of what happens until we reach the end where it goes into it. I would recommend this book to anyone, and this also made me feel so nostalgic about high school, and I could really appreciate Laura Nolan's writing and how she was able to write the inner monologue of a girl going through high school and navigating relationships, her boyfriend, friendships. All of that is just, the fact that she was able to put that in Autumn is just amazing and beautiful to me, and that's why I think this book was so impactful to me, because it was so relatable in the sense of how Autumn felt and was thinking throughout. What makes this book so great too is just it's so impactful to me, and it's gonna have such a long-lasting effect on my life. And when I said that in the beginning of this review that it changed my perspective of life, it did 100%, in just the sense that live every day to your fullest. That's all I'm gonna go on for that rant. It changed my whole perspective in a way that I don't think any other book would be able to. Maybe there are some out there, but as YA as this book is, and how some people might find it cringy and stuff, like this book was genuinely life-changing for me. Sounds so dramatic, but I will never not think about this book. It is engraved in my heart. I am recommending it to anyone who reads and telling my friends to read it. I love and miss this book so much. It's definitely one that I'll reread in the future. I just love these characters so much. That's all I have to say. So those were the 7 books that I read in the month of August. I would say this is a pretty decent reading month. I'm very proud of myself because I'm knocking off books on my physical TBR and finally getting around to these, because at some point I was excited to read these and buy these. You know what I mean? Now moving into September's TBR. My TBR for September I would say is very open, but also I have some set books that I want to read for specific videos. I don't have them mentioned in this yet because I want those to be a little bit of a surprise. Some of them though are just more mood reads that I want to get around to at some point in this month. Starting off, I am currently in the middle of 2 books right now. I don't know why I did that. I really wanted to read these. So the first book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I'm currently 200 pages into this book. I'm loving it. I'm eating this up. These books that I mentioned, I'm probably gonna make a mood reading vlog for them, so you'll see all my thoughts and opinions on these. So far, I'm loving this book. This is a highly anticipated book for me that I've wanted to get to, and that's why I'm in the middle of multiple books right now, because this was one that I wanted to start. I have very high expectations for how this will end. The second book that I have started is If Only I Had Told Her by Laura Nolan. This is the second book to If He Had Been With Me. We're not really surprised about this. I broke my bookbind ban to buy this book because I needed to continue where this left off. It also follows the point of view of Finn and a couple other characters, I believe, in this world. The next 2 books are repeats from last month's TBR, which is The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 3rd and final book in the Inheritance trilogy. I know there are other books in this world, but I'm pretty sure this is the final book in the trilogy. Obviously don't know what the main setting or plot of this book will be, but I am just very excited to get back into this world and be with the characters again. The final book for my mood reading TBR is The 7-Year Slip. I'm kind of happy I put this book off from the month of August because this book screams fall. I don't really know what about it screams fall. I mean, there's some leaves on here and it's like the yellow and orange coloring maybe. Definitely want to read this in the fall time. So whoever declares that it's fall time, that is when this book will be read. Probably in this month though, for sure. And I'm very excited to get to this because I've just seen such high reviews about it. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August, as well as my September TBR. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books that I've mentioned in this video, or any of the books that I mentioned for my September TBR. are. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. August was such a fun reading month for me. I really enjoyed it. I definitely leaned into different ways of reading. This was the first month where I had my Kindle fully and I was able to read on it, and it was so great. Highly recommend a Kindle. You guys know this. I love my Kindle. And then I also used audiobooks a lot more this month. Overall, I just really enjoyed this month. I was just reading a lot and it didn't feel like I was forcing myself to. So great on that. I also felt like I was kind of in a slump. Not pointing any fingers, but I'm very excited for September. I have some fun videos planned and I hope you guys stick around to check those out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye.